Imagine this, a leather-bound book, its pages stained with cryptic paintings and handwritten secrets, locked away in a Swiss bank vault for half a century. Its author, Carl Jung, a revolutionary psychologist who mapped the human soul, refused to publish it in his lifetime. Why? Because what he discovered inside was so terrifying, so alive, that he feared it would shatter the modern world's fragile understanding of reality. This is the Red Book, not a manuscript, but a descent into the abyss of the unconscious. A journey where gods, demons, and the dead speak as equals. Jung called it his confrontation with the unconscious, but it was more than that. It was a mirror held up to humanity's darkest, most luminous depths. What did he see that was so dangerous? Why did he bury it like a cursed artifact? The answer lies in a paradox. The very thing we fear most, the chaos within, is the source of our greatest power. But modern society wages war against it, medicating, distracting, and numbing the shadows that whisper truths we're not ready to hear. What if Jung's visions weren't hallucinations, but revelations? And what if the book he hid holds the key to a truth we've all been running from? The modern mind is a battleground, not between good and evil, but between order and chaos. We crave control, certainty, a world where logic reigns and the irrational is dismissed as madness. Yet, as Jung discovered, the unconscious does not obey these rules. It speaks in symbols, erupts in dreams, and demands to be heard, even if it tears apart the neat structures of our identity. Jung called this the shadow, the repressed, denied, and disowned parts of ourselves. But why is it so dangerous? Because society has conditioned us to fear it. From Freud's suppression of primal instincts to Nietzsche's warning that whoever fights monsters must take care not to become a monster, the greatest thinkers have grappled with this truth. What we refuse to face controls us. The Red Book was Jung's experiment in radical honesty. For years, he deliberately plunged into his own madness, conversing with inner figures like Philemon, a wise old man who emerged from his psyche. Was this insanity, or sanity in a world that had lost its soul? The real question isn't why Jung hid the book, it's why we hide from ourselves. What are we so afraid of losing? And what could we gain if we dared to look? The cost of this repression is everywhere. In the hollow exhaustion of modern life, the epidemic of anxiety, the gnawing sense that something vital is missing. We medicate, consume, and distract, yet the void remains. Why? Because we've severed ourselves from the mythic, the symbolic, the irrational, the very forces that once gave life meaning. Jung warned of a coming psychic catastrophe, not a war or disaster, but a collective crisis of the soul. Look around. We worship efficiency, but starve for purpose. We chase productivity while drowning in dissociation. The unconscious doesn't disappear. It leaks out in destructive ways, through conspiracy theories, fanaticism, or the quiet despair of those who feel like ghosts in their own lives. The Red Book reveals the alternative, active imagination, where we engage the unconscious not as an enemy, but as a guide. Jung's dialogues with his inner figures weren't madness. They were negotiations with the lost parts of himself. But here's the terrifying truth. If we refuse this descent, the unconscious will drag us down anyway, through breakdowns, obsessions, or a life half-lived. The choice isn't between control and chaos. It's between submission and surrender. Will you drown in the depths or learn to swim? The way out is not transcendence, but embrace. Jung's secret was this: you don't defeat the darkness by flooding it with light, but by speaking its language. The Red Book is a manual for this rebellion, a call to stop running and start listening. History's greatest visionaries, from alchemists to artists, understood this. They didn't suppress their demons, they dined with them. Nietzsche danced with his abyss. Van Gogh painted the whirlwinds of his mind. What if madness isn't the absence of reason, but reason's evolution? Begin with the taboo. Talk to yourself. not in sterile affirmations, but in the mythic symbolic dialogue Jung modeled. Meet your shadow in dreams, in art, in the quiet moments when the mask slips. The goal isn't to fix yourself, but to renegotiate your relationship with the unseen forces within. This is the true meaning of individuation, not perfection, but wholeness. The catch? It demands everything. Your comfort, your identity, the lies you've mistaken for sanity. But in return, a life no longer haunted, but alive with meaning. The Red Book was never meant to be read. It was meant to be lived. The question is, are you ready to write yours? Here's the secret Jung nearly took to his grave. There is no you to save. The ego, that frantic narrator insisting on control, is just one character in a far grander story. The Red Book doesn't offer answers. It annihilates the need for them. When Jung met his soul in those pages, he didn't find stability. He found fluidity. The unconscious isn't a basement to clean, but an ocean to sail. The demons? Crew members you've been tying up in the hold. The visions? Maps to territories reason can't chart. This is the paradox at the core of being human. You are both the prisoner and the key. The madness we fear is the price of admission to our own wholeness. Every great transformation in history, personal or collective, began when someone stopped resisting the dark and asked, what if this too belongs? The Red Book was never meant to be read. It was meant to be lived. History's greatest visionaries, from alchemists to artists, understood this. The Red Book reveals where we engage the unconscious not as an enemy, but as a guide. Yet, as Jung discovered, the unconscious does not obey these rules. It speaks in symbols, erupts in dreams, and demands to be heard, even if it tears apart the neat structures of our identity. Carl Jung saw it too. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And beware the unlived life. It will always demand payment. Marcel Proust's greatest coute reveals the truth. The greatest voyage is not to new lands, but to see with new eyes. Close your eyes. That whisper you've been silencing? It's not your enemy. It's your unfinished self, waiting to be heard. The Red Book was hidden, because truth this raw rewrites lives. Now it's here. The only question left is, will you burn it as heresy, or let it burn you into something new?